All right, we're going to welcome in Natalie Watson now. I'm so excited to have this chat with Natalie today. Natalie K. Watson is a rare bird mom from Australia, where she runs Back to Life Studio, specializing in somatic-based trauma-informed Pilates, which combines movement therapy, neurofeedback, and TRE, which are tension and trauma release exercises. And she recently published her memoir, Bigger Than My Body, in which she tells the story of loving and losing her two children, William and Hamish, to ADSLD. Although her boys are no longer here, she honors their legacy through helping her clients reconnect with their bodies, release stored tension, and rediscover meaning and purpose in the aftermath of a broken heart. So, hi, Natalie.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I just want to take a moment to thank Nicole for not only founding Rare Birds Foundation, but for creating and organising this incredible symposium several years ago, or probably, yeah, it was several years, gosh. Um, this was our dream of ours, and there's a few of you that are here today that we spoke about doing this, and here we are. We're bringing the whole community of ADSL deficiency researchers and family members to this meeting, which is fantastic. So we're on the right path from that point of view, that's for sure. So thank you, Nicole and Justin, and the committee or the community with Rare Birds Foundation, and also the ADSL deficiency families for this beautiful community. And I'm truly honoured to be part of it. Thank you.
This is definitely a dream we have all delivered together.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
So
Mm.
I'd like to start by hearing a bit about your boys, William and Hamish. What were they like? What was their relationship like? We see this beautiful picture of them here.
Yeah, I can't see any of the photos coming up there, Nicole. I know you did a beautiful job of all the slides, and I can't see any photos coming up. I don't know whether anyone else can see any photos.
Justin says he can. If you can put a thumbs up if you can see.
Oh, good. Okay, well that's good. I'm glad other people can see.
I'm sorry, darn it.
Why,
Thank you.
why can't I see them? It's always the
Oh,
way.
this that would be helpful so you know what we're talking
Yeah.
about, wouldn't it?
But that's all right. I know what we're talking about.
Okay.
I saw them. They're beautiful. So yeah, William and Hamish were both absolute lights. I'll say that, of course, because I was their mum and still are their mum. William was cheeky, charming, and wise beyond his years. He had a deep, soulful presence that drew people in. And Hamish was pure joy, very cheeky and sensitive, very attuned to however I felt. Hamish was attuned to that. And together they were pretty much inseparable. Even though their bodies were very fragile, I guess, their bonds were unbreakable. So people often commented to me about particularly William's eyes and Hamish's eyes, not just but they were visually impaired, but more to the point that they just had a deep soulful expression, and that was captured in a lot of photos. Um, so that
I,
was pretty much the essence of both of the boys. They were
yes.
beautiful.
And
Yeah.
I'm remembering from our symposium last year how many families said that same thing, that there was just something about the way they look. They one vision therapist I had mentioned it was like you can really see your child in there. They're in
Mm,
there.
mm,
And I think that speaks to that deep soulfulness that you were seeing too, Natalie. So I wanted
yeah.
to ask, what was sort of the first sign that you saw in William, your first son, that kind of made you go, something is wrong?
Mm. So the first sign that something was different was that William was well, first of all, he had trouble suckling, so from when he was born, and he slept for a long time. He'd slept for a good solid 6 to 7 hours in the first 24 hours after birth. And then, but aside from that, he was very sleepy. He was just a very docile, very sleepy baby and had trouble suckling. So that was the first thing. And then at about 7 weeks old, we started to notice that he wasn't making much eye contact and that he was more interested in the lights in the room and looking up at the lights and fixated on lights than he was watching faces or tracking obstacles. So that was pretty much the first the sign for us that something he was gonna need some help.
Yeah.
And yeah, and very much the similar with Hamish. Although Hamish, when he was born, he was like, so many people said to me, he is so normal. He was mirroring me. He was poking his tongue out. He breastfed straight away, and all of this. He was very much normal in everyone that looked at him's eyes, and it was very much of a relief at the time. But then at 7 weeks old, I started to notice some changes in him as well, and his eyesight, he started to his eyes started to wander as well. So he'd be looking away and thought something was amiss. And I was hoping that it was just maybe a little bit of a brotherly trait, but it turned out that it was actually a conditioned trait. And yeah, and then we're both diagnosed with ADSL deficiency in 2010. And I think Hamish was about 9 months old. I get the dates mixed up a bit here, but Hamish was about 9 months old when he was diagnosed with ADSL deficiency, and his older brother was about three and a bit, 3 years old when he was diagnosed. They were both diagnosed at the same time. So Hamish was diagnosed before William was diagnosed.
Mm.
And both of them, their developmental age, particularly William's developmental age, because this was in his medical reports, although he was, when he was 12 months old, his developmental age was about a 3 month old. And he really got to about the 6 month old developmental age, or even maybe 9 months old. And then he didn't progress any further. And Hamish was very similar as well. We got William up into a walking frame. He did a lot of standing and a lot of walking in the walking frame, which was great. In my book, I talk about funny stories about that. But yeah, it was good from that point of view, like to see him up in the frame and walking and getting a little bit mobile. But for Hamish, that wasn't so much the case. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say, Natalie, so of course I have two children. I didn't even introduce myself.
Yeah.
I'm Nicole. I have two
Yeah.
children with ADSL deficiency, Jonah and Flora. Jeez. I meant to talk about my children as well. The reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
When I came to this part of the book, which comes very early, I was absolutely floored, and I went to Justin and I said, I did not realize how similar our stories were.
Mm.
So, including the fact that we really thought Flora was typical as well. And we were told by several people, oh, she's so normal. Look at her. So I really, I connected with that part of your story.
Mm.
So you did write about the first time you really noticed William's eyes wandering was when he was getting his family photos taken. And the photographer
Mm.
could not photograph the eyes going in the same direction and mentioned that she would Photoshop them in.
Mhm.
And I also, for me and for Justin, the exact same thing. We tried to take Christmas photos. We looked back
Mhm.
at our Christmas photos and we said, every one of these photos with Jonah, he's looking with two eyes in two different directions. So that was
Mhm.
another thing that really sparked me
Mm.
to also ask this question to the group. So we asked, what was the um, first symptom that you saw in your child? Now, of course, what I want to say is I know I'm dealing here with scientists who love clean data. Facebook data is not clean data. I do my best. I'm also not a scientist. So I do my best. And this is what we come up with. We have lack of muscle tone and head control for most people being the first thing that they see. Seizures. Now we know with more severe presentations, they're likely to see seizures much earlier in their life. And so for people with more severe children, they are seeing those seizures. But I'm very surprised that 23% of families said the first thing they saw was vision impairment. whether it be strabismus. We saw nystagmus from 3 weeks. So from 47 responses, this is what we came up with. Now, I see
Mhm.
here that there's also nonverbal folks, or I'm sorry, people that voted for the nonverbal option as their first symptom. To me, I wonder if these are some of our milder cases, if that's the first
Mhm.
thing you're seeing, perhaps. And then we have unmet developmental milestones here at 6.4%. I feel like this correlates too to lack of tone, muscle tone and head control a bit. Um, but perhaps these are things like they're not sitting up, they're not rolling over. So more of those standard milestones. Interestingly, here we had one parent mention suspicious CTG tracing when they were pregnant. And that also made my alarm bell go off and go, oh, that happened with Flora too. And
Mhm.
so when I asked people to include comments, and these are some of the things that they said about these first symptoms. So I point out down here, we have another family who had unexplained extrasystoles. Early heartbeats are extrasystoles. So in the rhythm, these would come earlier than they're supposed to come. Um,
Yeah.
and oxygen level drops right before birth also happen to Flora. So I really love when a family, says one thing and it's only one family that says it, and then all of a sudden all of these other families are going, "Oh, well, yes, yeah, that happened to us too." It's so easy to sort of forget these little pieces of our stories as we go along. We had
Mhm.
two responses about latching, the suckling issue you were talking about, Natalie. I wanted to read one in particular. While pregnant, she moved very little in in her belly. In the hospital, the first time I held her, I noticed the sensation was different. I have an older son. It was like holding a rag doll. I told her father, and he didn't notice a thing. I didn't
Mhm.
dare tell the pediatricians, and I cried alone for many months. This this comment received a lot of feedback as well. A lot of families saying, "Me too." I knew straight away something was different. I just couldn't
Mhm.
tell what it was. Some families had these sort of involuntary movements that directly led into seizures, sort of being their first symptom. Oh, let me come back here. So, because of this, we know early detection is vitally important, right? It's very important, especially as we work towards these treatments, gene therapy treatments, any sort of drug treatment that can slow progression. I wanted to highlight this because A, I thought it was interesting and it made me curious, but
Mhm.
also, this is sort of the core of Rare Birds Foundation, right? Finding our children very early and getting them the help that they need when the help comes. So, a few years after their diagnosis, you started the Facebook group, Our Journey with ADSL Deficiency. What led you to do that? And I'm hoping that you can. Sorry, I'm trying to get my cursor to move here. I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about how that led you into participating in research.
Yeah, I think it was 2014. Well, when the boys were diagnosed, I think it was 2011, and I was desperately looking for research papers, and I couldn't find much out there at all. I think I came across three papers, and I came across two other families, and they were going through their own journey with their children with ADSL deficiency. And I just really wanted to, I knew that there was at least 40 other reported cases because when my boys were diagnosed, there was 45 other reported cases in the world, and I wanted to connect with them. And so Facebook was new
Mm.
back in those days. It was pretty new. And I went onto Facebook and I just started up, an ADSL deficiency page because I just knew that if anyone typed in ADSL deficiency, I wanted it to come up so that there was a path to connecting with other families that are experiencing this, especially because it's so rare. And that's pretty much what we did. And so we started out, we had about 5 members to begin with. Benedetta was one of the first ones as well. Avril from Ireland. So we had Benedetta from Rome, Avril from Ireland, Sandra from USA, um, and we had a couple from South America. Forgive me, I can't remember the exact location. But so there was about 5 of us that came onto that for a while, and that sort of sat there and steadily grew over the last couple of years. And in particular, I guess, Nicole, with all the extra work that you've been doing and with Benedetta have been doing, and just that, and even Abby being out there and just, getting the word ADSL deficiency out there in the community has helped, other families come and find us and have a little bit of a community where we can support each other through that group. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been I every time the families talk about it, we talk about how useful it is, how comforting it is to have that Facebook group. It's the only reason I'm still on Facebook, to be perfectly honest, Natalie.
Mm, yeah.
And how much you can learn about the care for your children, seeing what other people have done. People go into our group all the time and ask, has anybody tried this? Has anybody tried this? And lots of, peer validated feedback, which, in the absence of a standard of care, uh, is very important to our families. So thank you for starting this group. I'm very appreciative. So
Yeah.
you did lead into participating in research, and that's our next slide. So you had a blog and a website, right, Natalie?
Yeah, that's right. So I started up the blog, which was called oh, I can't even remember what that called. It was called The
The
Calling
calling
Within, I think
within.
it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, The Calling Within, and I just put in the words ADSL deficiency as much as I could in there so that people can find that as well. So it was another search pattern, again, particularly if they weren't coming through the Facebook group. They could find me through other searches. So that's why I did that. And I wrote a couple of little articles in there just about ADSL deficiency and just trying to, I suppose, connect some of those researchers that were already doing research in with other names of people that are doing research as well. Um, and and then through Benedetta and the group, the researchers in Rome, they were doing some studies there, and Matteo will probably go into a little bit about that later. But they did some studies, and there was a family. There was Benedetta, myself, and Cyrus's parents. Sorry, I've forgotten. Oh,
It's the pink
Kari,
brown. Yeah.
Kari,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kari, yeah, the Browns, um, and um, and we were able to help researchers with the information that as parents, we were able to help write that research paper as well, which was fantastic. And then it's just been, it's just been expanding ever since. I think Dr. David Patterson in the US as well has done quite a significant bit of research, as well as Dr. Zakhanov as well. So yeah, unfortunately, there's no research done here in Australia. I have written to the Murdoch Foundation here in Australia, and we haven't got any projects happening here, but who knows? That's what part of the reason why I wrote the book too, was to start to get the message out there and to get the story out, and maybe the Australian researchers might be able to connect in with the other global
Yeah,
researchers as well. Yeah.
absolutely. So here on the slide, I actually have the insights, the form that families would come to fill out.
Mm.
Gives a little bit of
Yeah.
insight into, and there were 8 pages, so it was pretty comprehensive. How many families did you have? I think, was it 12 or 15 families filled this out?
Yeah, there was probably a few more than that. I think the last time I checked it, I haven't checked it for a long time. And you know that the irony of that, I actually in the very first chapter in the book, or in the preface, the introductory chapter in the book, I talk about being on a plane traveling to Broome, and this poem came to me from my son William, who was still alive and back here in Australia. But it was like he, you know, telepathically gave me these words to write, and I wrote them. But anyway, on the plane back from Broome, I actually wrote that survey.
Really?
So yeah, so that was it was a very I don't know, it was a very purposeful, I suppose,
Mm.
experience from all of that. And
Yes.
definitely, and has definitely, served a legacy for both the boys moving forward as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. And on the slide here, I also have a little screenshot I took of the paper because I love
Mhm.
seeing your names listed. For any families that maybe don't read a lot of research papers, there's always an author list, all the people that work together on this paper. And so we have Carrie Payne Brown, Natalie Karen Watson, and Benedetta Contardi, who all participated in that. It's
Mhm.
such beautiful and important early work that we at Rare Birds Foundation are going to hope to be carrying forward.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk a little bit now, and I want to switch gears about some of the hard choices that you had to make. You talk about making a lot of these hard choices in the book, including things like, deciding to stop some therapies for the boys that you didn't think were useful, stopping anti-seizure medications, which is a big, scary choice to make because you didn't think they were helping. Can you kind of discuss how you came to these decisions, or maybe what your process was for making these hard decisions?
Yeah, I think, well, I guess with the seizure medication at the time, making those decisions, and obviously going into the book will give you a really good background. So it's not just there was a lot of thought that went into it, and I don't advocate for, just taking your children off your seizure medication by any means. Let me just say that.
This is not medical
Um,
advice.
that's right. Yeah, absolutely. And but it was guided, like I was supported through with medical team about this, and that it came to the question of, like, they were having all these seizure medications, and we couldn't see the real child. We couldn't see who they were. There was sort of like the varying side effects that some of the medications were causing as well, and they were still having seizures. And so we made a decision with our medical teams on two occasions, actually. We took them off and on. We did on. We took them, sorry, we got them all on the medication, and we were full on, everything we could throw at them, we were giving them. Obviously, under medical supervision. It was prescribed by, professionals and everything like that. But we were still having the seizures. And so we went the other way as well. So after a few years, we decided, you know what? This is how they are with all the medication. They're still having seizures, still having status epilepticus, and quite significant challenges from all of that. So let's see what they're like without it. And so we took them gradually, took them all off under medical supervision again. It took several months, and we took them off them again. And still very similar, still having seizures. So, and but the difference is when they needed the emergency seizure medication, when they did go into status epilepticus, the emergency medication helped quicker in
Hmm.
some cases. In some cases, not every time, but it seemed to be that it was because they weren't taking it all the time. Some days when they could take midazolam, 2 to 3 times a day. And that's every other day, so that's quite a lot of that drug, and the effects of how that made the boys look and feel. And so, yeah, so we made some choices around that, and obviously supported by our medical team. Then there were also around the therapies was pretty much more so, I guess William was lucky enough or unlucky enough, I don't know, he was lucky enough, that his therapy started at 6 months old. So he was having he was having physiotherapy and occupational therapy for to help him with his vision. So to help him use what vision he did have better.
Hmm.
And he did. He really got very good at looking
Hmm.
and starting to track things, and he did quite well with that. So he had some great results. And Hamish, he had better vision, but he didn't learn to use his vision as well as what Will did in those days. But it gradually improved as he got older. But then there was some therapies, more physical therapies like the standing in the walking frames and the standing frames and things like that. And while standing and weight bearing is extremely important for the strengthening of the bones and many other reasons, for posture and everything, but we could see that that was very uncomfortable for them as well. So we were always started to, like ask who was all these therapies for,
Mhm.
and which ones we decided that we were going to pursue, and which ones we decided that we would, park for maybe later or just not use them at all. And in the book, I guess I explain a little bit more about that. But communication, both of them were non-verbal, but they were certainly communicating on different levels in their own way. As a parent, as a mum, we all have this intuitive, you know, communication that we can with our children. And so I suppose it's a matter of, tapping into that and connecting with the children from that point of view. But we also used symbols, what they call pet communication boards or a pod communication board as well. Sorry, I've got a fly in here that's flying around me. And we used the communication pod communication book, which was fantastic. And look, I'm a big advocate for just as much as possible, just helping them have some choices. Learning yes and no, and if they are uncomfortable, how we can make them more comfortable, things like that to still give them a voice and how important that is. And learning to read the signs, that they are experiencing discomfort and enough is enough, and that they're tired and they need to rest and things like that. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
but coming back to that, so yeah, so I guess the important thing is that you know there'll be times where you'll have to set some really clear boundaries, and deciding what medical interventions you want to allow and what you won't. And as parents, you need to both be on the same page as mum and dad, especially when you're discussing that with your medical team, and also just to ask the questions. What does quality of life look like for our children, and is it about extending, we just don't want them to be suffering, and we don't want to be watching them, being in a torturous state,
Yes.
particularly with, seizures and things like that. So we're always looking to, make sure that they're comfortable as much as possible. And again, just working with your medical team to make sure that that they are comfortable and that they're not stressed in an otherwise very stressful situation for them. And
Yeah.
hospitals can be very stressful, as we all know,
Yeah.
both for us as well as our children as well. So yeah.
Yeah. I did run a poll in the group about this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what are some of the hardest choices you've had to make as a parent of a child with ADSLD? And
Mm-hmm.
the largest single answer was placing or refusing surgical interventions. So either making those choices.
Mm-hmm.
But interesting, so that was 42%. But interestingly, choosing comfort care and creating a do not resuscitate plan were the two following, and those also equal 42%.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's interesting as I look at this, the chart around this, is that these are times when your child seems to be crossing into a new threshold of illness. So whether
Mm-hmm.
that's, for example, my children don't have any G tube, and doctors have wanted us to get G tubes, and we've been very hesitant for several reasons. But even having to think about those things is very stressful because what it sort of becomes for me in the mind of me as a parent is Now they're definitely medically complex. It's sort of crossing these thresholds into
Mm,
now they're
mhm.
even sicker. Now the situation
Yeah.
is even worse. And I think the same of choosing comfort care or palliative care, as some people call it, making that DNR plan, do not resuscitate plan, which no parent should ever have to do. And I think we can all agree. Um,
Mm,
that would be hard for anybody. Removing your child from school, which is something that we personally have done, has been a very big, also sort of step into my child is too sick to go to school anymore. Um, the last one here was stopping therapies and medications. So I found that very interesting in how it sort of places these, um, these sort of alternative milestones in a rare disease family's life. Of, okay, the
mm,
first time you've been approached about a G tube and you had to make this decision. You've been approached about comfort care. These are different kinds of milestones for ADSL parents. So how did you
mm.
know when it was time to switch to comfort care for your boys? Like, what were the signs that you maybe saw?
Um, well, see, yeah, so the word comfort care, um, it's a good phrase actually. Here in Australia, we call it palliative care. Um, and palliative care can be two levels. It could be end of life care, or it could be just generally just comfort care. You know that they're just their condition is complex, it's ongoing, it's life limiting. It's like there's lots of pieces in there, and the comfort care piece is is just making sure that that they are supported. Uh, in we're not worried about pushing them out to school. We're not worried about them getting on the bus to catch to get to school. We're not focusing on outings. We're not focusing on things like that. We are focusing on quiet time for their body to heal and rest and repair, especially after what they've been going through, whether they've had lots of seizures. It can take 4 days for them to come back to normal after that experience. So I guess for us, though, noticing that would be when they were, and that could happen several times. So we've gone from having, a good run of like 6 months of where Hamish and William were probably both at school every day, and then you'd go down the rocky road of in and out of hospital for another 6 months, and then you might have to escalate it and go, okay, we need to focus on just getting them well again. We're going to have 6 months at home, like not they're not going on excursions, they're not going outings. We're just going to keep them, looking after, keep them close by and looking after them, and focusing on their health and nutrition and everything like that. And so, and that could happen. That probably happened maybe 4 or 5 times. And usually it's escalated because one of them would have gone into, status epilepticus, where they've been having seizures and had to go into ICU, and they've had the tubes down their throats and, done the whole, worst case scenario, situation in the hospital. But for us, it was when we noted when we'd done that a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd noticed that we just had to ask ourselves what will we intervene, how will we intervene again, and to what level do we tube feed. So we did tube feed, but we didn't do peg, and tube fed for probably about 3 years or so, on and off, depending on how well they were. The rest of the time, they just loved food. They would eat, not by hand, we would feed them. But yeah, so look, it's a very, very personal question
Mm-hmm.
for families, and it's something that they, mum and dad have to sit down and they really have to work out a plan for themselves. And I'm hoping that, obviously you'd have your doctors and your professionals working with you to support you through that process, particularly a social worker and the metabolic team, or palliative care team, to help you through that. But yeah, definitely needs to be supported. And like I said, one of the hardest things is being on the same page at the same time. You know, at one stage, my husband, he was more, now my ex-husband, but he was more accepting of where the boys were at, and I wasn't there. And so I fought it a lot longer. And probably my boys suffered a little bit longer than maybe they, or particularly I think what Hamish did, longer than he really needed to, because I couldn't let him go.
Mm. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's a very personal
Mhm.
experience, and that I totally understand it. And, as a parent who's been there not once but twice, I'm always here to help our families. And that's why I'm here. And that's why I wrote the book as well, because, no one ever thought that the odds of all of this happening, to rare disease, and, we have two kids, both yourself, Nicole. And so, yeah, it's something we don't want any parent to go through. But if, to have someone that's been through it, that's here to support you, if you need to have that little honest, hard conversation, I encourage you to have that conversation with each other first, and, set some boundaries of what a good life looks like, and what a good death looks like too, as well. And that's a really morbid conversation, but unfortunately, it is part of the reality in some cases with our children, when they've been diagnosed with a severe case of ADSL deficiency.
Yes. And that is something it's one of the reasons I wanted to ask this question, as I've met more families, even outside of our community, rare disease families, and talking to bereaved families. I I always wondered when a child would die in our group, what did the child die from? And no one wanted to talk about it, which I
Mm-hmm.
understand. No one wants
Mm-hmm.
to ask. And in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, in that grief, I'm not sure most people are really thinking, let me go into the group and explain this horrible thing that's happened to me. But what I have noticed is that um, there is a huge component that is not spoken about, that sometimes it's the family's choice. The family is making a choice to not continue life-saving care. They're comforting their child, and that means their child may pass away. And I think you
Mm-hmm.
talk about that beautifully, Natalie. And I think it's important to say what is a good death, not just for our children, for all people. We don't talk about these things, and a good death is as important as a good birth and a good life, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
thank you for saying
Yeah.
that. Um,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see if I can move on to the next slide here. Oh boy. Okay. These beautiful. So I'm what's on the screen now, Natalie? It's such a shame you
Thanks.
can't see.
Mm.
So we have three of the art
Ah.
you did with
Mm-hmm.
Hamish. So there's
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah.
dolphin, yeah. Can you talk a little bit, because you write very openly about the spiritual connection that you experienced with each of your boys? Um,
Mm-hmm.
specifically around or during their passing, and what do you want people to sort of understand about those
Mm.
sacred moments, especially in terms of, you've talked about this somatic healing and the central nervous system. How do those things kind of all come together for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, I guess, to take it back a step. So after William died, I had a tremor that I could feel. It was like a nervous tremor, for a couple of days afterwards. And I went to my doctors and they ran some tests thinking, I thought I had MS or something was going on, but it was for a few weeks. I could feel this like underlying buzzing, almost like I was cold or shivering underneath my skin. And I started looking into it a little bit more, and I later discovered that what I was experiencing was a physiological response to stress or to trauma. And that was the body's way of releasing the stress and trauma, and that's through tremoring. So you all may have experienced that before, where, you may have had a fright, or you've come out of surgery yourselves. You may have witnessed something that was quite horrific, and you may have a tremor inside you afterwards. And that tremor is the body releasing that stress out of you. And so I experienced that I was experiencing that through the grief that I was experiencing. So I started to learn about trauma release exercises, which are a series of exercises that actually help evoke that natural tremor response. So when you are going through a quite significant traumatic experience, like it might have been going into surgery, or just stress of life, or you're witnessing your child in hospital. This is the it's a exercise that can actually help release the stress through the body. But what it also does is it really helps ground you and connect you into yourself, into a deeper level, and you become a little bit more grounded. And so that for me was a really important, I suppose, gift that I could do for my child, so that I could be really grounded in moments of when they are quite, that they may have been suffering, they've been through their seizures and things like that, that I can remain grounded and that I can be that real source, like a real anchor for them, and just use my breath to connect in with them and just be there with them from a physical physical, but also deeply connected spiritually, I suppose. So it's energetic is probably another way of saying it. That so we're on the same page from that point of view. And my breathing would co-regulate their breathing. So I would breathe in, and I could start to watch Hamish starting to breathe in and starting to follow the rhythm of my breath, just like we do when we have babies and we rock them from side to side. It's a similar kind of thing. So, the mother's temperament or mood can co-regulate to a child. If you're stressed and uptight, your baby is going to be that as well. So it's about coming down and just letting them find peace, a place to land. So I go through that experience. So that's what I learned through that. And so when Hamish was in his final days through palliative care, I was able to I didn't realize that what was going to occur that did occur. But I just had a really remarkable experience with him, and being able to connect in with him on such a deeper level and do artwork where he was able to indicate to me the images that we were going to select, like just in like blocks of thought, in like a almost like telepathy kind of way. And I would feel that in my body, and he would, I'd ask him questions, and he would answer, and I'd put the artwork together for him. And it was the most profound experience I've ever had. And honestly, I don't think if I hadn't had that experience, I don't think I would have been able to really share the book, and be able to be here and talk about it so openly. Obviously, I'm a bit, I get a bit worried about people thinking, well, that's a bit woo woo. But, really, I guess the biggest message that I want people to understand is that we're bigger than this body. And that's what it was all about. And that's what the journey was all about. That's what William's message was all about, 5 years or 6 years before, 3 years prior to writing the book. That's what it was all about. Is just understanding that we are bigger than this body and that we can connect in with our children on a deeper level. And I think that's really important to help that healing pathway for them. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I love looking at these beautiful images, Natalie, especially knowing now how they were created together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so their legacy, you've talked a little bit about that, but you've been able to sort of take what you learned about this grounding, this co-regulating, this method of working with the body to help other people, to help yourself. You write about this a lot in the book about your healing journey. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you continue to advocate for the inclusion of the Bratton-Marshall test as well as early metabolic screening for babies. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that and how you sort of see this legacy of your boys.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in there, isn't there, from all of that. Um, yeah, look, I'm a big advocate for Well, I think it's fantastic that we have the screening there. I know that before Hamish was born, I was searching high and low for, I suppose, a diagnosis for William. What was happening with him? Because the diagnosis we had was severely developmental delay. And we ran there were so many studies that they did, so many blood tests and everything that we did, both with my partner and myself, and with William, and we found nothing.
Mhm.
And then we moved states. We moved to Victoria, and our neurologist basically sent. Well, we sat in the appointment, and the neurologist said, do you have any concerns about Hamish? Because Hamish was 3 months old at the time. And I nodded my head. And he said, well, how about we get Hamish checked as well and just see if there's not, a condition that's between the two of them. And so that came back, that he was diagnosed with ADSL deficiency as well, like I said. But that was just through the simple urine test.
Mm.
After all the blood tests that they did, and I was very tempted while I was pregnant with Hamish to do the amniotic fluid test as well, which I didn't do because I was just concerned that I'd affect the fetus, like for all those things. I was just terrified that I was going to injure him.
Mhm.
And yeah, so the Braxton Marshall test is fantastic. I think it's a great test that I think every family should have before they have a baby, if they can, if it's allowed. I don't know what the process is with all of that. But the other thing is that I guess I'm an advocate for too is just about the metabolic screening before they start vaccinating children as well. I think that's quite important, just to make sure that the child hasn't got an underlying, or the baby that we know nothing about because it's just been born into the world, doesn't have any kind of underlying condition or disease or pathology that's going to contraindicate being vaccinated. And I'm not saying vaccinations are a bad thing at all. I'm just saying that I think that it's important to know who we're vaccinating. And a newborn baby, we know nothing about them. They're born totally clean slate, and we fill them with a vaccination that we don't know is possibly going to have an effect, reaction to. And in both the cases with my boys, it's something that I did notice. So I noticed that Hamish had a little seizure after his, a few hours after his. And like I said, with William, I noticed his eyes, he started changing in his eye connection as well. So I'm not saying that they caused that. I'm just saying that there was obviously an underlying metabolic condition that, we know it struggles with dealing with neurotoxins, and that's one of them. So,
So I did a poll in the group for this as well. And while 80% of families said that they did not experience regression, increased seizures, or any other notable adverse reaction, we did have 16% say they did see one of those symptoms after a vaccination. So I think
yeah,
that your point is very, especially as we are learning more about the disorder, the immune system function, the mitochondrial function that we're going to talk about later. Um, this can I myself am a proponent of vaccination when it makes sense. I also am a proponent of precision medicine, and so that's what I want to say about that. So, are you doing
yeah.
Tuesday Pilates?
Yes, I am doing Tuesdays Pilates. Thank you, Nicole.
Yes, so
So
this would be a good time to come do trauma
absolutely,
release exercises. Can you drop a link
absolutely.
in the chat to where
Yeah.
people can join up? So it's Tuesday.
Yeah, so I made it Tuesday at 8 a.m. It's Australian time so that it can fit around all these international times.
Yeah.
So you can come on and you can do Pilates class with me. It's absolutely free. Come on there, and I'll always allocate a little bit of time afterwards if you want to talk a little bit more, or you want to do some other trauma release exercises. But I incorporate the Pilates and then a little bit of the trauma release exercises at the end of that. But again, I've also written another little book, which is called Unstuck from Oh, you can't see it because of my blurry
Oh, there it
background.
is. There
There
it
it
is.
is. Um, and that one talks about, about the somatic release and the breath work and things like that that can be really helpful for your children. And I'm putting together a little workshop, a little course, um, and about deepening your connection with your children as well. So I'll be putting that out to the families to work with that with me as well, because that would be a really lovely experience to be able to connect with others that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Natalie. I want to open up if anybody has questions. We also have, well, I don't know if Natalie will be here. So if you have questions for Natalie specifically, you can go ahead and raise your hand or drop them in the chat.
There is one question there. Is a book available in the Netherlands? Yes, it is. Apparently, it's available everywhere. I'll put the link into here as well for the book, Bigger Than My Body, and you should be able to purchase it anywhere there's an Amazon store. So, and it can be translated in all around the world as well.
Amazing. Oh.
Great. Oh, and there is another question I think coming through.
The convulsions often increase when there is an ongoing infection, and doctors do not notice this infection and should do a throat swab or urine analysis. Yes, so if
Yeah,
the infection is not treated, so this is the crisis checklist, Carmela. One of the things that we have on that crisis checklist is exactly this, because as you're talking about, we do notice that, and Natalie writes in her book, the presence of golden staph infection in her boys at the end
mm,
of their lives that was
yeah,
undiagnosed. So this is one of the reasons that that is and we have other families that have said this same thing.
yeah.
Natalie, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.